podcast for business communicators who want to learn how to communicate better for better business results. Now, I've had some spectacular guests on this podcast over the last few years, but I am completely blown away to have Angela Lewis on this podcast. And if you don't know who Angela Lewis is now, you will by the end of it, because she's phenomenal. Okay, she's an author, a former professional basketball player, an NCAA Division I coach, and an entrepreneur. Angela, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to dive into this today.
Okay, excellent. Now, my audience may not know who Angela Lewis is. I've just given a very, very brief overview. But please tell me, how have you got from a professional basketball player who obviously has, done this passionately from school all the way through to the professional arena, and then suddenly found herself as a communicator helping other sports people become better communicators, because some of them are bloody awful, let's face it. So how have you got to be where you are now, influencing those who really need it?
Well, I got here now from not being a very good basketball player. I am 6'1". I've been this tall since I was 12 years old, and sport really became the place where I learned that you can be very bad at something, but then become very good. If you stay with it, you have the right mentors, and you practice the skill of sport. I believe communication is the same thing. It's a skill. Some people may be more charismatic naturally, like some people may be more athletic naturally, but you can learn how to become a better communicator and develop the skill. So I started playing basketball, ultimately played pro, but in college I studied communication. So my bachelor's and master's degrees are in communication, which really helped. And then I started coaching. And as a coach, you're literally having to figure out, how do I motivate this young person and this player to achieve their potential and convince them to follow the path that the team has set. And so my communication started with being a coach, and then I started working with various organizations and leading organizations, and realized, as an athlete, you kind of have presence already. So if we can increase the skill with the presence you already have, then you really have the potential to have a lasting impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's very little difference between taking, say, coaching of athletes or sports people to coaching employees of an organization, because it's the same sort of thing. You've got to have a goal. You've got to be aiming as a team to get towards something. And you have to try and let them motivate themselves to make the best of what they've got. But if you hadn't got involved in sports, what do you think you would have become, and how different would your voice be today?
If I hadn't gotten involved in sports, I loved dancing before playing sports. So I probably, on the active side, I probably would have done something dance related. However, I always wanted to be a teacher. And I feel like I'm still living that, but sports is kind of the foundation for the teaching that I've done on the court and communicating off the court.
Okay, all right. So then you take the skills that you've learnt through your pre-professional sports career, you've developed that in the sports arena as a professional, you've then taken that into coaching. How did you first realize that your voice had power beyond the game? What moment shaped what you're building now?
I have this very, very distinct memory. I was working in a school system, and I was talking to an elementary school girl. And Lee, if you've ever looked into the eyes of a child and you've told them that they're capable and that they're smart and intelligent, and they look back at you with the belief, like they're holding on to every word that you said, I can still see this little girl's face. And that moment for me really solidified that, okay, I have to really take the words that I say seriously and be more intentional about what I say and how I say it, because it makes a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the same with employees in an organization, or business, large or small, that if you realize that you are connecting and influencing a life, you suddenly become a lot more conscious of the words you say and the words you don't say.
Yes.
and how you phrase them, how you shape them, how you shape your message. And it suddenly becomes a whole, you just lift yourself, let alone the other people that you're with, but you lift yourself into a new game, as it were. And so, I applaud you for having gone through that moment where you say, okay, I can not only can I do this, but I can influence people for good. Why is it that some athletes wait until the spotlight is on them before they start thinking about developing communication skills? Because sometimes you look at these professional athletes and they're interviewed by the media and you go, oh, boyfriend, girlfriend, you really need some training. So why do they wait until it's so late? Why don't they get training at the beginning of their career?
That's a really great question, because you're focused on being an athlete. You're locked in on being an athlete and being a great athlete. You're not thinking about what the media is going to perceive of me. Also, there isn't training. There hasn't been a lot of conversation around let's train athletes earlier. I talked to one of my former college coaches who's still coaching college basketball. It's been coaching for 20 years. He said they do media training for 1 hour, one time on media day. And this is a big time school and a big time conference. That's all the time they spend on media training. So it makes sense that players don't necessarily have the skills to communicate. But I think now, I really believe now, Lee, that athletes are asked to be more professional earlier on. So we're going to see the need and the desire for more communication training much earlier. And we'll see this next generation of athletes have a better ability to express who they are and how they feel in media situations.
One can only hope. I mean, certainly in Australia, we're sports mad like America's sports mad. And so we've got professional athletes who've come through the system and they finish their professional career and they go on to be commentators.
Yes.
And you think surely your employer must have wanted to put you through media training because you're blokey and you're talking all this, lingo and it's just atrocious. Honestly, just atrocious as communicators, and you just do the game. You give the game a bad name. So why is it that some professional sports people, when they transition out of professional sports, just don't get the memo and realize that they're in a different game now? They have to be a media person, not a sports star who gets in front of a microphone.
It's because you have to look at your team and be really honest about your skill set. I was at an event last week and there's a guy who played professional football in the NFL here in the US. And he said, I'm asked to speak all the time, but I get really nervous. So there's this assumption because you were a great athlete that you actually want to stand in front of audiences and speak because you were in an arena of 20,000 or 80,000, depending on the sport that you played. But I think society could give athletes a bit more grace because when you're in between the lines, you're in the zone, you're not talking to a crowd. And so give them the grace, especially when they're newly retired or younger athletes, to develop the skill set. We see that they get better over time. And at some point they say, oh, I need some help. And then they bring someone on their team to help them develop those skills.
I mean, it's the same, I guess, with, business people, successful entrepreneurs, for example. Look, Joe Blogs or Joanne Blogs, you're a successful entrepreneur. Can you get up in front of our business community and tell us your success story? Now, these entrepreneurs have not necessarily spent a lot of time in front of a camera or a microphone. So they get up in front of these audiences and the audience is expecting pearls, of wisdom to just drop out of this person's mouth. But because they not done a lot of stuff in front of a microphone before, they fumble, they do all the classic, bad communication tricks. I can just see that with sports people as well. They're no different. As you say, they might have been in front of 20,000 or 80,000 people, but they're not connecting one-to-one with that 80,000. They're, connecting, they're in the zone and the 80,000 are just this peripheral, tiny bit of noise. And then suddenly a microphone is thrust in front of their face and a camera, and yeah, it can all go horribly wrong. So where then do you come in into that equation? Do media organizations get you involved before that professional has transitioned out of their career, or do they leave it until the professional is out and then you get involved?
I think both places are valuable. It's while they're still on the team, so being called in on the organizational level to talk to athletes, whether it's the high school, college, or professional, I think the younger you can develop the skills of power and patience and poise in your communication, I think is important. And then once someone wants to transition into their business life or whatever their profession, it's important to continue to hone those skills. Every business professional I know keeps working on communication because it's the most important, to me, skill that you can have in terms of your ability to connect and lead. Particularly if you want to be a leader, you definitely have to improve communication skills.
And if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, for example, all of their senior leaders, beautiful communicators. They've obviously been through training so that if a crisis hits, they know, the media team or the marketing communications team, whatever in the organization, they know they can roll their CEO out and he will or she will do a fantastic job of talking to the media and calming the public down.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can understand why you are wanted, because sometimes, you know, the transitioned sports stars don't necessarily get that you've got to be a good communicator. So then if you lived overseas for a little while, I gather, whereabouts did you live?
I lived in Germany and I lived in Medellin, Colombia. Binzburg, Germany and Medellin, Colombia.
Excellent. Beautiful. So then how did you learn about communication in those countries where English wasn't the first language?
Those experiences really taught me to slow down and listen. You're forced to listen when the language of the culture that you're in is not your first language, because you're really seeking to understand. The other thing I learned is to use less words. I wasn't fluent in either language. I just had a few words. And if I wanted to have a conversation with someone, I had to use the words that I knew, which has really helped me be able to communicate better and be more concise.
As you just were then.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
Good point.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so then if we look at the great communicators of this world, there's some business people, there's some politicians, there's some media people, sports people who are great communicators. What's the difference then between being media trained and being a powerful communicator?
That's such a great question. So media trained is you're sitting in front of a camera and you're being asked a few questions. It's not a dialogue. You're being asked a few questions and then you're responding. And typically after a game, those media sessions are pretty short. Being a powerful communicator is the person who manages their nonverbals. They understand there's a goal that they're trying to accomplish in the communication with someone. And you can tell that they've practiced and they take their words and their presence seriously.
Yeah, rather than just being trained and so getting up there and not rehearsing and not knowing what they want to say at the outset, and so just rambling. Yeah,
exactly.
We've all seen those interviews with the manager or the coach after the game, and sometimes they just ramble on for hours to a very simple question.
Yes, yeah. and I will say I used to be that way as well. I would ramble, and I had a lot of filler words, Lee. I used to say definitely. I looked at one of my interviews from college after it was at sports station, and we were talking about playing college basketball, and every time he asked the question, I said, definitely. Oh yeah, definitely. And definitely. Yeah, definitely. But that was my filler word. And so powerful communicators understand how much of a distraction those can be in conversation, and they practice to remove those and slow down to have intentional conversations much, much better.
I learned something because I'm also a bit of an author as well, a writer, and I learned a wonderful little hack the other day about these filler words, and that is in my writing, take out the word just, because it's one of those filler words that we think it's kind of like, as you say, it's a filler word, so we're thinking of what we really want to say, but we're filling in the space. And so the author that I was reading said, if you take out the word just, your writing will be a lot tighter. And I tried it; they're right. So now I try to, wherever I can, to take out the word just, as much as I learned years ago to take out the word the from sentences, because the is a filler word as well. Yeah, I know your fashion. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's I learned something new today. Just and the that would force me to write differently. Definitely write differently.
Yeah, because I mean, in sentences, it's right. We've seen the and the comes in quite a lot. But it was a marketing person, in fact, Ted Nicholas, a famous American marketer, direct marketer, who said, take out the word the or that. And you will find your sentences a lot punchier. And so I tried it, and damn it, he was right. And then, as I say, this week I learned to take out the word just in my sentences. Damn it, they were right. So we pass on these tips.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. No charge this time. Okay. Okay. Look. You're charged with bringing a new group of athletes that are new into the profession, as it were, and you're charged with making them media ready. What do you do? How do you make them media ready?
First, we assess their comfort with media. I believe that anytime you're trying to increase a skill, whether it's sports, communication, you need to assess where you are. There are some people who are very uncomfortable, some who have more comfort. The second is helping them understand how to own their story. It's important to know how to tell a quality story. So then we go into that and then they practice. The third piece to that is mastering nonverbals. I was at a symposium recently. There was an athlete on stage and he just kept swiveling. There was a swivel chair and he was just talking and swiveling. And I just wanted to say, just be still, like just stop moving. So becoming aware of your body, because powerful communicators are very still in their presentation. And then the third piece, as always, is practice, looking at case studies to learn and then practicing. When you practice, you develop confidence and then you're able to get better. And then you test it out in real life, you evaluate and come back to it. So that's the process. It's assessing where you are, learning to tell powerful stories, being able to master your nonverbals, learning from others through case studies, practicing, putting it into real life, and then evaluating and doing it over again.
I have, over the years, trained small business owners and entrepreneurs on how to present more effectively. Within the first few minutes of the first session with this particular entrepreneur, and I always know whether it's going to be a hard struggle or whether it's going to be relatively easy to pass on the wisdom and see them shine. And that is what they do with their hands. If they stand there and their hands are, in front of their groin or behind their bottom, or they're fidgeting or they're putting their hand, I know it's going to be a hard road. But if they do that sort of, the finger thing, the steeple, and it's in front of their chest, then I know this person understands, and it's going to be a doddle to help them. Have you come across that sort of thing as well?
I've definitely seen athletes who just move, people who are always moving. And that's I love that. What you do with your hands makes a difference, because some people just don't know. They don't know what they're signaling to the audience when they're moving and how their body language is really impacting their ability to connect.
All right. If we come to a sort of a close, what are 5 things that sports people and entrepreneurs and business leaders of whatever size business, what are the 5 things they can do that will help them communicate better with their audience? And what are the 5 things that they don't want to do?
5 things to do, 5 things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So the first thing you want to do is understand that you're practicing. So practice your stories. The second thing that you want to do is to first assess your nonverbals. And this is really easy. Ask a friend, what do you see when you're talking to me? Ask your colleagues, how am I moving? Because sometimes we're just not aware. So become clear about your nonverbals. 3, find a communication mentor that you can look up to. So who is someone who you really believe is a powerful communicator? For me, it's Melody Hobson. I think Melanie Hobson, who's the co-president of Ariel Investments, she speaks with such poise and grace and certainty and clarity. So find someone to look up to. 4th, practice alone. Turn on your camera, record yourself, and listen. A lot of times people do interviews and they never want to hear it again. Like, it's over. No, watch yourself. And then the 5th is put yourself in a position to do it in real life. So you're asking for people to assess you. You're asking to assess your nonverbals. You have a mentor, and then being able to take that and do it in real life, give a presentation for someone, really is helpful. Okay, so here's what you don't want to do. Don't move around a lot. We talked about it a little bit, but don't move around a lot when you're presenting and when you're talking to people as a leader. It just diminishes trust, because we think about little kids are always bouncing around and doing TikTok dances. You don't want to be that person. The second is master your eye contact. So this is the don't have shifty eyes. We don't trust people who are looking all around when they're talking. We feel like they're hiding something. So don't have shifty eyes. Third, don't show up in a way that is not appropriate for that environment. I think our presence and the way that we show up really matters and communicates something about us. So don't show up in a way that could cause friction with the environment that you're going to. Next, don't talk really fast. I know there's a lot of people who like to talk really fast. Speed loses people because our brains can't process someone talking at that speed. So don't talk really fast. And then 4th, I would say, don't forget that being a communicator takes time and that it takes practice. So you don't have to be perfect, but you will continue to get better.
Yep.
So those are the things to do and things not to do.
Excellent. And having moved to Vietnam now, where I am, mm-hmm. I have, your thought about, slowing down your speech has become really important, top of mind for me, mm-hmm. because, I have presented to English-speaking audiences around the world, and and so I can rattle off at quite a pace because I'm excited about what I'm talking about, and, I bounce with that excitement and the audience comes along with me, but coming here, I suddenly realized English is not their first language. And if they are going to try and understand me, then I really have to slow down to give them processing time. Yes. And so I've learned exactly what you've said. I have learned to slow down and be more intentional with the words that I'm saying, the sentences, and it just makes so much more sense. And you can see the clarity of their eyes going, I understand you. Whereas when you talk fast, you just disappear.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Living in another country will humble you and force you to become a better communicator. I think you develop this level of cultural sensitivity to the fact that it's really hard to speak another language. And it forces you to think differently and see the world and how we communicate in a much, much broader sense.
I mean, who was it? It was, wasn't it Mark Twain who said, that travel broadens the mind? And I think it's absolutely right. If you have any opportunity to send yourself or your children or your teams or whatever overseas, even if it's just for a couple of weeks or even a week, just to get them to experience a new culture and learn about the new culture's communication patterns. It impacts you in a positive way when you come back to your usual audience.
It does. It does, Lee. And I would love to add to that. If you're someone who can't get away for a few weeks, that's the ideal. You can immerse yourself, go to another side of town, go to a cultural festival in a lot of cities around the world. I live in Dallas, Texas. In Dallas, there are festivals every weekend of different cultures. And you can develop friendships with people who aren't just like you. And that's a way to learn how to communicate differently and pick up other cultural nuances that are beyond your own.
I could not agree more. That's absolutely on the nail. Yeah. Now, one last thing, the Angela Lewis story. Where does it go next? Everyone's got a plan of some sort. Where is Angela going next?
There are two big things that I have going on and coming up that I'm incredibly excited about. The first is a children's book called A Ball and a Chance. It may be 2 books by the time this comes out, but the premise of the book is there's a little girl that's very tall that's trying to find her place in this world, and basketball becomes the place that she finds, and she takes this game and connects with other cultures and learns a lot about herself and other people in the process. And then the other thing is just working with more athletes around how to communicate effectively with power and presence. And that is something that I'm continuing to do. So excited about both of those. Yes, this little girl. The book is, based on my experiences and so many others. I started telling people about the premise of the book, Lee, and so many people said, "Oh my God, my daughter needs this, or my niece needs this, or that was me. I didn't feel like I fit in." And I don't know if you know this or not. There's a secret tall girl club. Anytime tall women see each other out in public, we are always like, "Hey, tall friend, you're so amazing." Like, we connect immediately because we're so rare. I didn't know the average woman's 5'4". I had no idea until I was like in my 30s. And so we are giants, really. The 6 foot and over, we are definitely giants. So we acknowledge each other always.
So then how do you cope with airplane flights when you're over 6 foot? Because that's a challenge.
Depends on the airline, how much room you're going to have. But when I lived in Latin America, oh my God, it was a struggle because everyone is significantly smaller. So, you upgrade your seating, you sit in the exit row, and you try not to hit your head on things when you stand up. But it'll happen inevitably.
I mean, it's the same over here in Vietnam. I'm 6 foot, and all the transport is built around people who are 5'2", 5'3". So you buy a sleeper package on a bus to get you from one city to another, and there's a sleeping compartment that you can get in, but you can't because that sleeping compartment is not your size, and it's fun.
Sounds eventful,
Yeah, sounds eventful. Angela, thank you so much. If you had one last thing to tell a sports person or any entrepreneur, business person, if you could pass on one nugget of wisdom to them, what would it be?
That nugget of wisdom would be your words have power. And because you are a leader based on being an entrepreneur or an athlete, take your communication seriously and learn how to become a better communicator and help others become better communicators as well.
That's perfect. That's a perfect way to end. Angela, thank you so much for your time today. And I really, really do appreciate it, as I'm sure my audience will as well.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Lee. Thank you. And I'll leave some resources. I'll send you a link to put in the show notes with some resources on how to help athletes become better communicators.
And if we can, I presume you've got your own website as well?
Yes, AngelaRLewis.com. You can find out more about me on LinkedIn. Send me a message, Angela R. Lewis. You can find me there on Instagram, the Angela R. Lewis as well.
Excellent. Angela, thank you so much today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lee. I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Me too. Bye.
Bye.